This is Our Eye on the EU, Inter Alia's outlook on EU affairs through different lenses.
Gaza, the Freedom Flotilla and Europe's silence.
You have probably heard about the Freedom Flotilla, a humanitarian mission trying to bring aid directly to Gaza by sea. At the end of this journey, it was intercepted in international waters by the Israeli military. The passengers were detained. Among them, climate activist Greta Thunberg and French MEP Rima Hassan, journalist Omar Fayyad, and other volunteers and activists. It took the EU over 14 hours to respond, and when it did, the statement was evasive, denying any responsibility of ensuring protection of its citizens, saying this was a national competence. No mention of international law violations, no demand for accountability. But this isn't an isolated incident. After some days, thousands of pro-Palestinian activists marched from North African countries in the March for Gaza. They were blocked in Egypt, and many reports emerged of harassment, deportation, and repression. Yet the EU kept silent. EU leaders are reviewing a trade deal with Israel, among timid requests of improving the situation of poor Palestinians. Meanwhile, Gaza is under siege, with civilians facing extreme deprivation and hunger. Europe does not have to pick sides in a complex conflict to uphold basic principles, defending the rule of law, protecting its own citizens abroad, insisting on humanitarian access, and demanding respect for international obligations from all parties. Silence is not neutrality. It is an abdication of responsibility.
Tough times for fundamental rights.
This month, two major reports revealed the bleak state of fundamental rights in the EU. Civic space is shrinking, inequality is growing, gender-based violence, online hate, and threats against journalists and activists are on the rise. The EU Fundamental Rights Agency highlights the increased use of automated technologies, including AI, at Europe's borders. These tools profile and filter people before they even arrive, often violating basic rights. Inside the EU, online security is a strict priority for citizens, showing clear double standards. The Civic Space report from the European Civic Forum echoes these concerns. Civil society groups, especially those working on social justice, LGBTQ+ rights, and migrant solidarity, are facing more legal obstacles, funding cuts, and criminalization. Since 2024 elections, the political balance in Europe has shifted. Many governments now put security and competitiveness above rights, treating democracy like an optional extra. But fundamental rights aren't abstract. They shape who can speak, live, protest, migrate, survive, be heard, and participate in democracy in society.
Housing crisis in Europe. A generation locked out.
Europe's housing crisis is hitting young people the hardest. The new Eurostat report shows that in 2023, almost 1 in 4 young people aged 20 to 29 in the EU spent more than 40% of their income just to cover rent or housing expenses. That's 10 percentage points higher than the general population. And we know that this is not just about money, but a social and democratic crisis. It's about struggling to move out, delaying life plans, or being forced to live in overcrowded, poor-quality housing, even when working full-time. In major cities, rents are skyrocketing, while wages remain stagnant. Public and affordable housing is increasingly scarce. And despite constant talk about youth empowerment, most EU countries still delay serious policies to make housing truly accessible to younger generations. Governments are allowing investors to treat housing as a market, not a right, buying properties, raising prices, pushing people out of their communities. The EU has promised action, but so far, housing policy remains mostly in the hands of national governments, which keep competitiveness as their highest priority. If the EU wants youth to participate in society, which means to live, work, organize, and save the future, it needs to stop treating housing as a luxury.